And good evening, good morning, good whatever time it is when you're listening to this. Tonight I have a super special guest. I have my mom joining us. She grew up in Scottsboro, Alabama, our hometown, clearly. And her story is a little bit different than what we have talked about over the past couple of weeks. We've been talking a little bit about segregation, but tonight we're actually going to dive a little bit deeper into what it was like to integrate, what it's like to be the first to integrate into the white school system, and the experiences that she encountered throughout her middle school and high school years. So, without further ado, help me welcome my mom. I said tonight my guest is my mother, Madeana Richardson. So, Ma, introduce yourself to the people.
Hello, welcome to Tia's podcast. What I won't do for my child. So let's get it started.
Well, all right. I accept that. So, as I was in the introduction sharing with the listeners, in the past couple of weeks, we have been talking about basically kind of segregation through the early 1960s. But what we haven't really touched base on is what it felt like to truly integrate. And I think you were in a little bit of a different position where you actually kind of were forced to integrate in middle school. And so I want you to kind of share what that felt like, what that journey was like.
First of all, I wasn't really forced into integration. My mother forced me. During that time, individuals had the choice as to whether to integrate into the white schools or stay at the predominantly Black schools. I didn't have a choice. My mother was principal of a junior high school. I mean, not a junior high school, but an elementary school in Bridgeport, Alabama. And it was called Bridgeport Rosenwald. That school was a two-room building. Basically, there were two teachers. My cousin, Mary Williamson, taught the first through the third grade. And my mom was the principal and school teacher for fourth through the sixth.
Oh, wait, hold on. So they were the only two teachers at the school?
Yes, yes.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. So she had to do double duty she had to pull double duty as the principal and teach.
Yes.
A heavy workload.
Well, it's a small community. So it wasn't like, I doubt if there were 50 kids going to school there. It wasn't a big school. It wasn't a big community.
Mm-hmm.
But once I did first through the third grade at Hollywood Elementary School. And then once she became principal, she transferred me up there with her, fourth through the sixth.
And she was your teacher?
Yes, very hard. Very.
I can only imagine.
No, I thought having her as a teacher that I could see the test, but she always left her tests at school.
You were gonna cheat.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, she was hard. And I will never forget this. We had to learn the measurements. And for some reason, I just could not get it. I studied and I studied. And she told me if I didn't make a on this test, what she was going to do to me. So I was really terrified. And that's the first time I've ever prayed, really. I said, God, please help me, And really, I made 100 on the test. So that's how I know. No, I didn't cheat. No, I didn't cheat. But that's when I realized that, there's something to this prayer.
Prayer thing?
Yeah. I mean, I made 100 on it.
Did she help you study?
No.
She didn't even help you study?
No.
Wow.
She was hard. She was hard on me because I was the teacher's child, She
didn't want everybody to think that
right.
You're getting favoritism.
Right.
I guess that makes sense. So you were at Bridgeport.
At the end of the sixth grade is when the city school system in Scottsboro, Alabama, approached her as art teacher.
Mhm.
Because prior to that, she was in the county school system. And being in the city school system meant more money. Plus, she didn't have to drive like 40 miles a day one way to school and back. So, it had its advantages
So she got into the Scottsboro City School District.
because she had an art degree in
Well,
elementary.
was the school district only white schools at that time?
No, I mean,
Scottsboro?
in Scottsboro, no, they had George Washington Carver, which was a predominantly Black school.
Was that all grades?
Yes, 1 through 12. Yeah.
Oh, 1 through 12. So if you went to Carver, you
I
went
would have
there.
been, in the 7th grade
Why didn't you go to Carver?
because I didn't have a choice. She went to the
Oh,
white school, and it was just automatic that I was going to the white school as well.
mm. And so she went from being the teacher
From
slash
principal to,
principal to being the art teacher
yes, at Brownwood Elementary.
at the elementary school. And so at that point, you said you were in 7th grade.
Right.
And so when you started school, I think we were talking about this, but I always thought you were the only Black student there, but you were telling me it was you and 2 other students.
Yeah, I was the only one in the 7th grade, and then there were 2 that was in the 9th grade.
Up to 2 grades ahead.
Yeah,
And so they kind of had each other in their grade, but you were
alone.
and so what was it like the first day walking into, into was it Scottsboro Junior High or what
Yeah,
was
it was Scottsboro Junior High.
okay.
Well, it was called, I can't even remember the name of the junior high school at the time.
When you walked in the first day, like what was it like actually before walking in, kind of like pulling up to the school knowing that you were
There was
about to
fear. Yeah, I was scared, and because Scottsboro was still segregated at that time. So I knew it was going to be bad. I just knew it, you know.
Mhm. Did you
Um,
sleep the night before?
Probably not. It's been
Probably
so
not.
long.
It just feels like just thinking about it right now, it actually makes me feel a little anxious when I ask you, like, what did it feel like driving up to it? Because I
Well,
get anxious going into like normal spaces. Like I get a little
well,
bit of anxiety.
just even going into school, they were calling you the N word, you
Mhm.
know, and
As soon
then,
as you got there.
oh yeah, because the school buses were pulling up, and then getting out of school, I would always hang back to after the buses left, and then I would come out, and
You
I
would
can
stay like
remember,
in the classroom or something.
yeah, in the lobby hall there. It was just really bad because I remember going home telling my mom, that they're calling me the N word, and she said, "Well, do you know what that is?" And I said, "No." She says, "Anybody that's stupid. You're not stupid. So when they call you the N word, they aren't talking to you. They're talking to themselves." That
And that's
helped.
what you told us.
That helped a little bit, but
Yeah.
still,
Doesn't take the sting out of it though.
no, 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 it doesn't.
Yeah, I remember. Well, that's what you told us clearly because Nana told you. So you told us something interesting. They have changed the definition. I don't know if you know this. They changed the
Yeah,
definition. It no longer says like an ignorant person. It's no longer defined as that. It now says
slain.
no. It says someone of dark skin or black.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I saw somebody say something about it on social media like several years ago, and I was like, clearly they have this definition wrong because I remember after you had told us that looking up the definition, and seeing it said an ignorant person,
Yeah.
and then when I saw that the definition changed, I was like, can they just up and change definitions? Like, How can you
Oh,
change what a word means? And so, yeah, now it defines it as a Black person, which
oh
that,
well.
that's
It
pretty
was just a
wild.
it was just a word that we just never used in our family, you know.
Yeah, yeah, and but people like to use it just
I know I have issues with that.
to hurt you. And so, did it like as the school year kind of progressed, did it get a little bit easier? Or was that whole first year kind of
Well, the whole year was traumatic for me because they really didn't think that the white kids, see, this was supposed to have been just a test to see how the white kids would react to a black teacher. That was the whole purpose of this.
oh
And
really?
yeah, and originally she was only going to be there for 4 hours at the white school and 4 hours at the black school.
Mhm.
But the whole thing just turned around and the kids loved her. I mean, they didn't expect that to happen because you had a lot of racist people in Scottsboro and the mountain area, Sand Mountain.
Mhm.
So even when the kids would come to school, you know, and they would say something about the N word, and they said, well, my mom said that, you know, so they were hearing it from home, but not there at the schools.
Yeah.
The principal was very welcoming to my mom. The whole staff was, you know, and they just tried to make it easier for the transition when it was going to be mandatory for everyone to go to school together.
So how long was the test supposed to last?
Oh, well, that school year.
So
But
just that one school year.
yeah, because see, legislature at that time, it wasn't mandatory to go to a white school.
Mhm.
But I think within 2 or 3 years, they closed Carver down, you know, and
And then
everybody
so all those students had to
had
vote
to, yeah, they had to go.
to go into it. So that meant like by the time maybe you got into
High school,
the high school, then it started to be like
yeah, it was pretty much mandatory.
more of a mix of black and white at
Yeah, because the principal, when I went to the ninth grade, the principal of Carver, Mr. Weatherly, we called him Prof, was my algebra teacher at the white
oh,
school.
oh wow. So at least there was jobs also for the teachers that
Oh
were
yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, like my aunt was in music, and
who was that?
Aunt Mary,
She taught at the schools?
yeah, at Carver. She was the music teacher at Carver.
Hmm.
Uh, she had her first nervous breakdown when they put her in the white school.
Oh really?
Yeah, yeah, she did.
Too overwhelming.
Yeah, and she was so easygoing, you know. And
She
I
had a
think
gentle
just
spirit. It was
yeah,
probably
yeah.
was she teaching in like the elementary school also, or
She
was
was at
she
the same school with my mom.
oh at Brownwood?
Yeah, pretty much all the elementary school teachers, like Gloria Pritchett Heatonton, was the librarian at
Mhm.
Brownwood. Um, so I know they had those three teachers, black teachers over there when my mom was there.
How long did Nana work in the Scottsboro School District?
Let's see, she retired. She retired teaching. She had taught for 30 years.
And you mentioned that you mentioned that the principal was very nice. What about the other teachers in the school that first year that you got there
At the junior high school.
at the junior high school?
Oh, let's see, the principal was Wendell Page at that time. So the teachers, most of the teachers were really nice. I can remember a couple that didn't seem like they were too happy to have me in the class, but they couldn't show any kind of
Reaction.
yeah, you know when you're welcome and you know when you're not welcome, you know.
Yeah,
And
real
so,
talk.
yeah. So I remember a couple of classes, it just seemed like the teachers were extremely hard, you know,
But
on
you were
me.
used to it because Nana had prepared you.
You know, having her prepare me and then being thrown into an atmosphere or an environment like that was completely different.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time I ever felt that I didn't like the color of my skin.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
How long did that last? Like that feeling?
pretty much through high school, maybe.
Because it's just like,
Well, you
well,
know,
clearly this is the only reason. This is the reason why they feel this way about me.
well, well, first of all, you know, because of your granddaddy's background, I just felt like going to school with the whites, and then I was the at that time the dark one in on my dad's immediate side, like between his sisters. You
Hmm.
know, I just didn't like it. You know, my cousins were very fair-skinned people, and I didn't. I figured if I had been lighter complexion, I don't think I would have had such a hard time in the school system. So I didn't do black dolls. You know, I just wanted to be white. You know, so that I could
Fit
blend.
in.
Yeah, yeah, fit in. That's,
Well, that makes me a little sad.
oh, I
Um,
understand.
because like, yeah, that makes me a little sad. Actually, I didn't think there were black dolls. Actually, I
Oh,
thought
yeah, they did have black
there were
dolls.
only white dolls. I feel like, when we would go to the store and stuff like that, I never saw black dolls. We kind of talked about that a little bit last week about like how the colorism, even amongst black people, where it just because of your skin tone, you're made to feel different, and it's something that you absolutely have no control over. Like nobody knows what you're gonna look like when you get here, and the fact that like just because you're more brown than somebody else, you're treated different or told that you are not good enough. And like that's real talk. I feel like nowadays it's not as much because there's so many things going around talking about like, love the skin you're in and like black girl magic and all those different type of things. But back when you were young, there wasn't that.
No, no.
There wasn't that encouragement. And then you kind of talked about granddaddy. You said you mentioned about, everybody being fair skinned and his background. I guess we can talk about that a little bit.
Oh,
About what you mean by that, just a little
oh.
bit.
Well, my dad's dad was considered my grandfather was considered mixed white. He had a white father and a black mother.
Hmm.
And then if you go another generation back, his dad was white. So my grandfather, Reese Talley, looked Italian. But you know what's so interesting about this is even when I was in high school, there was another Talley. They used to joke, is that your cousin? And of course, no, and now he's in my family tree.
He is on the family tree.
Oh yeah. Oh
How
yeah.
close? I'll have to go
He's
look
off
at it.
that, yeah, back. And I said, there were some more tallies there.
Hmm.
But what they didn't realize was that their their white relatives were coming to visit my dad at night so that nobody would know that they had black blood.
Like cousins.
Yeah, like
It was
Jacob
cousins that
Taylor.
were
Yeah,
coming. They
yeah.
would come visit. So
He would cut and he called my dad cousin Tyree, you know, but he also, would apologize if you see me out now and I don't say anything.
mhm.
It was just a bad time for me. And see, my dad, I actually didn't even find out about the white side of our family until I was in the 8th grade. And this white guy came to our house. And during that time, the only white people that would come to your house. They were the insurance person, you know.
Insurance man.
Yeah, the insurance man or the milkman, you know, but
I never saw the milkman, but I did see the insurance man.
so this guy comes to our house and I'll never forget. Uh, he said, "Is this where Tyree Talley lives?" Because at the time, my parents were the first to build a brick house on that street too. So GI loan, their house notes was $40 a month. And I
I
could
take it. I would take it. I'm gonna pay this house
they
off.
struggle. They struggle sometimes with that.
Well,
Just
'cause-
getting the
yeah,
$41, you know,
yeah.
because she would clean houses with my grandmother on the weekends just to get extra money, you
With
know.
Nana Wood?
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. Well,
But
I mean, $41 back then, because like, what was the salary? Salary was low.
yeah, I mean, you know,
That
I
was a
don't,
big house.
yeah, I mean, you know, everybody thought we had money, but we really didn't.
Mhm.
As I got older, I realized what sacrifices they made, you know, just so that they could provide for me.
Mhm.
Yeah, but
So he showed up at the house.
yeah, his name was Uncle Effie.
Effie.
And he said, "Is this where Tyree Talley lives?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, would you go get him?" And so, and it's really ironic. I mean, I didn't even ask him to stay outside. He was standing there in the living room.
You
So
let him in the house.
yeah, he was in the living room.
Like, sir,
You
one
always let the
second.
white man in. I mean, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
insurance man.
No.
I thought he was the insurance man. And actually, he had just gotten out of prison because he had killed so many whites.
Oh my
Oh,
goodness.
and they had given him life, and he was like in his 80s then when he got out. But
Mhm.
anyway, I went out and told my dad that there was this old white man in the living room that I thought it was the insurance guy, and
Mhm.
he wanted to see my dad. So my dad comes inside, and as soon as he walked in, he said, "Uncle Effie," and I can remember saying, "Uncle who?"
Like, how does this work?
Yeah, and then my mother said, "Well, I think it's time you need to tell her what her
We need to
background is."
sit
So
down and talk about this a little bit.
yeah, and he visited with Daddy a long time. He was on his way to Virginia where his daughter was, and I never saw him ever again.
Just that
Yeah,
one time.
but that one time.
And so, like, clearly you had to make friends along the way.
Oh
So
yeah, oh yeah. Even to this day, I still have many white friends.
that you grew up with.
Yeah, because I was in the beginners band. I was the only black in the beginners band. Um, it was just a hard time because you knew that they didn't want you there in the first place.
Mhm.
Then secondly, uh, I would hate to go on school trips because, you know, they will always have their people in their room and I will always be left out, you know, like, and then someone would say, "Oh, well, she can sleep in our room." And I used to hate that. I used to literally hate going out of town. And like we did band trips, you know,
Mhm.
I was always
And they were like overnight trips.
oh yeah, yeah. Like when we would go to marching contests sometimes,
Mhm.
or like the Girl Scouts will go to Montgomery. It was, I mean, they were super active in things in their communities.
Yeah.
It's just I had to tag along.
Yeah. I would have played sick.
There was no such thing as playing
I was
sick.
like, I was for the dramatics. I would have been sick. I
Yes,
cannot go.
I tell you, most people have really good memories of their high school,
Mhm.
and mine just represent just um, pain, I guess you can say.
Yeah. But you did make, like you said, you
Oh
did
yeah,
make some
yeah,
lifelong
oh
friends
yeah,
though that
yeah, I did. And then by the time I got to high school, you know, the color of my skin was no big deal. It was
because
just
everybody,
those early years.
well,
Yeah,
yeah, the early years, which is
was junior
is
high
the
school.
getting there to that part and kind of enduring like people calling you out of your name and like just being ugly
Yeah, and you
for
know,
no
there was no
reason.
such thing as dating interracially, you know. at that time, or
Were people dating interracially though? They
no,
had to have been, no?
no, they weren't.
Maybe not in Scottsboro.
Not in Scottsboro. Well, I mean, the North, that uh,
Well,
was wide open, and my dad wanted to move up north,
oh,
so
he
that
did.
he could get, yeah, so that he could get a better job,
Hmm.
and because he really did hate that uh, my mom made more money than him, because at the time he got out of the service, he had his GED, but he wanted the experience of going back to high school because he missed all of that.
Yeah.
So once he got out of the army, he did his senior year at Carver.
Uh-huh.
And, and then at night, he would work as a janitor at Maples Mill.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And because he couldn't find nothing else. So he would go to school during the day, and then in the afternoons, he would go and clean up their meals. You
Hard
know,
work. Hard
yeah,
manual labor. Granddaddy was a hard worker.
yeah, he was.
And so I know one thing that we kind of talked about when we were kind of getting prepared for this is that like in school, it was there wasn't the separation. But outside of school, there was still like the
Oh yeah, the
separation.
blacks lived on across the track, the whites lived and another thing, in 65 they still had colored bathrooms, colored fountains. I can remember very well that blacks used to have to take a test in order to vote, and they would come to my mom so that she could tutor them, because there were many that couldn't write. So they had to place an X. And if they placed the X, then she could go in with them, because they couldn't read it.
And she
But
would read off like the
yeah,
ballot to them,
yeah, yeah. And they would make it very hard for blacks to even have the voting privileges.
which is still today the voter suppression thing that they talk
Yeah,
about.
it's sad.
And that's wild though, that they're like, okay, in order to be able to have an opinion, you have to take a test to be
Yeah, and
able.
that was another reason why my parents just really emphasized the importance of education,
Mhm.
because that was something that no one could take from you.
Yeah, yeah, for
But,
sure.
over the years, I have seen that we as blacks, we always have to go over and beyond uh, what our jobs call for,
Hmm.
just to be accepted when you have a white person sitting right next to you that just walked in with no experience. So that part really hasn't changed a whole lot, that we're always proving ourselves. Why can't we just be accepted? You look at our paperwork, okay, that you're qualified. Yeah, we may,
Period. That's it.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah.
You're qualified is where it should end right there. Yeah. Um, so one thing when we were talking last night, one thing that I kind of mentioned to you is that I feel like y'all raised us just a little bit differently than how some of our friends in Scottsboro were raised. I think we were around more white people growing up than probably our black friends.
But oh, you were, yeah.
And so, and you were telling me that was because like how when Nana kind of got into the Scottsboro school district, like her peer group
She
kind of.
just evolved. I mean, it was just unreal. Like, the colleges were after her. She taught at the junior college, because she was so talented, and I regret that I didn't take the time to learn everything that she knew how to do. I mean, she's very talented lady, very talented.
I see sometimes like when you post things on Facebook, I see people, probably the students that she taught in Scottsboro, saying like different things about her, and like how somebody said, "Oh, I read this once on like in the comments or whatever. They said, "Oh, I still have something that we made in like pottery, some piece of pottery or something
And
that they
ceramics.
made. Yeah, like a ceramic. That's exactly what it is." And I was like, she impacted a lot of people's lives.
Oh,
Like,
she did.
yeah.
She really did. And at the same time too, and this was something that as I got older,
Hmm.
because once I finished high school, um, and like I said, I had some really great teachers, you know.
Yeah.
Like they would stay, like I was in pre-cal and I was having some problems, especially with geometry. And I remember Mrs. Sanders would stay over just so that she could make sure I was ready for my test, you know. So there were a lot of really good teachers that God
Yeah.
just placed in my path, you know, and it wasn't that, it was the students from Sand Mountain, you know,
Hmm.
or people within that community that were still against integration,
Hmm.
you know.
Just pushing against it for no reason.
Yes, yeah.
No
So
valid reason.
once she started at Brownwood, they didn't let her go to the black schools for half a day. So now you're looking at, well, the blacks are being deprived from art.
Hmm.
And I remember the principal, you know, would go to bat, and what they ended up doing was letting her record a video every week, and the white kids got to have the real deal, and
She
the
would be
black,
present for them.
yeah, but the black kids got a video.
Well, that was advanced.
And then the books too, like
Yeah.
the books were secondhand books, you know. The
Hmm.
black schools got the secondhand books, and you know, the white kids were so they had so many more resources available than the blacks. And that
Yeah.
was another reason why my mother insisted on putting me over there, because she wanted the best for me too.
Yeah. Education
Yeah.
wise. And so after high school, what did you decide to do?
Well, I decided to go to a black institute. Well, she graduated from Alabama A&M,
Mhm.
and I knew that was a no-no, because
To go to go to A&M?
yes, everybody knew the Snodgrasses.
Yeah.
I thought, not doing that. And that's where my parents wanted me to go, but I chose Tuskegee. And I
Mhm.
said, well, at least that way she would have to drive 5 hours to get to me, you know, before, instead of just popping up at A&M whenever.
Just popping up and saying, "Hey,
I
what you
had
doing?"
plans. I had plans. I had been in prison for the whole 12 years. And so I decided, oh no, I'm going to let my wings fly.
And
And
let them fly, you did.
yeah, I did. Yes, they did. Yeah, yeah, they did. I had a good time.
So, well, what was like kind of the um like when I think about going like an HBCU, like I just picture like it being more lively, I guess. You know, you have the fraternities and the sororities more present, and like, yeah, just a little bit more lively than maybe your
Initially. I mean, you know,
PWI is what they call them. So there's the HBCU, the historically Black college and universities, and then there's the PWI, which is predominantly white institutions.
well, you know, at Tuskegee, I was introduced to everything. You know, it was like I was so naive because I was only 17
Mm-hmm.
when I went to college. And I can remember kids that were from California, Detroit, you know, Chicago, all of them were at Tuskegee. And it was just a
Good
fun
time.
place. It was just like me being let out of prison, you know, because my parents were very, very tight on me. You know,
Great.
I didn't date. If I did go on a date, I had to be back by 10 o'clock.
Um, Sounds familiar.
Oh, stop it.
Sounds familiar.
You know, I had always thought if I had daughters that I would I would always tell them the good, the bad, and the ugly. Where parents. My mom never told me about the ugly.
But
I think I can say this. I think a lot of our Black history is being swept under the rug.
yeah,
It's up to us to tell our kids from whence they came,
yeah,
because eventually, who knows, in 20 years, just like they changed the definition of the N word, they will take it all out of the school books, that we will have lost our identity. And so many of our relatives paid a big price just so that we could be where we are today.
hmm
So, not just Black Lives Matter, Black History matters, you
that
know.
part. Black History Matters. Um, and I don't know why. It makes people feel uncomfortable. It makes people feel some type of a way to the point where they say, well, we can't teach about this. We have to like act like it didn't happen. But
You
there's
know,
a whole people group that exists that say this history did happen. And we have ancestors, we have relatives who are here presently talking about the history that they had to go through, talking about the things like how you're talking about like the things that you had to go through and persevere, the scars that kind of leaves behind, and for I guess the government to say no, we don't want our kids to know about this because it makes them feel bad about themselves. I think that's why they don't want to teach it anymore,
well,
to get it
you
out,
know,
but
uh, I mean, it should make them feel bad, because we had to endure. And even though they may not have been the person that
did
uh
it.
yeah, and it could have been maybe 2 or 3 generations, but it was their relatives,
Mm-hmm.
where my mom and dad both had said, never judge a person by the color of their skin, and to always treat people the way you want to be treated. And that wasn't true for me in high school, because
Yeah.
they didn't treat me like they wanted to be treated. So, even here I am 60 years later, 50 years later, 55 years later from high school, it's like the scars are still there. They aren't mental,
Mm-hmm.
they aren't physical, but they're there.
Yeah.
And
It's
those
like it
scars,
leaves a whisper of like, it that
it's just, I was thinking about that today. I said, I didn't think I was pretty. I had such an inferiority complex during high school, you know, uh, just because of the race thing. And here my mother was the complete opposite. You know, I'm down here on the low spectrum feeling bad, and here she is, like, she's the
this
queen bee.
popularity. This
The queen
popularity.
bee, yeah. I mean, that's how it was. Like,
Yeah.
I started being Black, then all of a sudden, the Black people are hanging at our house. It's just all whites, and they were good whites.
Yeah.
They truly loved her.
Yeah.
I look back, and even if I go to Scottsboro today, you know, people who had an impact on your life, you just don't forget. You just don't
Yeah.
forget.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I know when we go home and like we go into Hammers, even sometimes we have gone in and you haven't been with us. And they'll be like, oh, look, it's Medina's daughters. And I'm like, how do they even know who we are? Like, we don't even live here anymore.
And
And
and that's the sad part about, you're accepted only by, and that was another thing between the Black communities and the white communities. You're accepted by who you are,
mhm,
not by what you
who you
are.
know, who you know.
Yeah. So all during high school, I basically kind of had it made because they all love my mom.
Hmm.
And then when Revere came in and my dad got a job there as foreman,
Hmm.
money was great. It was like people just thought we were rich. And like I said, I thought we were too, you know. And then as I got older, I said, you know, they weren't rich. You know, we were the first family to get a black and white TV. People on that street would come up to our house to watch TV. You know, it's just crazy. And back during the day, you know, when they had, I think we were probably the first family to get a private line on our phones, because all the phones were, I don't know what they call it.
Party line? Is that what the
Yes, the
party
party
line was?
line. So you had an operator and she'll say, number, please. And then we would say 423J. And
That was
then,
the phone number?
yeah, that was
It
my
wasn't even
grandmother's
a
phone
full
number.
phone number?
No, it was like 423J.
Who
And
did that call?
that was my grandmother's phone number.
Oh, that would be to call Mama Nat.
Yeah. And
Oh.
it was so funny because you could listen to people's conversations, and then the operator would say, you kids get off the phone. You know?
How could you listen to people's conversations?
Oh,
You
no.
could just pick up a phone and
Yeah.
randomly hit this
Yeah. And
phone.
people, it was a party line. So
So
you couldn't
weird.
use the phone till they got off the phone. And if they were talkers, they could talk all night.
Did you have to pay to use the party line?
Well, just like a regular phone bill.
Oh,
Yeah.
it'd be like a phone bill. Oh.
Yeah, you know, you pay your monthly service.
Oh.
But
That's funny.
it was just it was a different time, a
Mhm.
different frame mind, you know, and even after my dad moved out here with us, he still had so many scars, you know.
Well, he
Uh,
did.
you
Um,
know,
he sure did. Poor granddaddy.
yeah, he
When
did, because he was not accepted.
and his was for a
Marrying a
different
black
reason.
woman, yeah, yeah. I think if he had not married my mother, I think his whole demeanor or his whole walk in life would have been different,
Mm.
because he would not have stayed in the South.
I was gonna say he wouldn't have been in Scottsboro.
No, I don't think he would have, because he, you know, he had done a lot of things. You know, he went in the army when he was 16. Actually, I think he was like 15, and they just lied on
I
his
remember he said that he lied about his age.
yeah, to get in, but he got to see so much of the world.
Hmm.
And so he knew what existed, where my mother had never been outside of Scottsboro other than Huntsville.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Seeing her grandfather, our great grandfather, Papa King, was the first black man to have a car.
Oh really?
Yeah, and like he had like 300 acres of land. He had a lot of land.
How did
So
he get all that land?
I think it was just passed down. They worked from his family. I mean, you know, they sharecroppers.
Sharecroppers. Yeah.
Yeah, they worked, and he just worked hard and
And
bought
all
land.
that land is still there, isn't it? It's just
Yeah,
divided,
yeah, it's still there.
amongst the family, I guess.
All yeah, all his kids,
What was
kids.
it?
Yeah,
A bunch of those kids. And
it is.
so, um, I guess I think one thing also that you said that's kind of interesting, because you said your experience versus Nana's experience, because y'all were kind of walking through the same thing, but it was very different. Like,
Yeah.
what would she tell you, like when you would say, "Well, this is what my experience is."
Oh, she would, you know, she tried to make it better for me, and you know, and say, well, you just can't let people, you know, uh make you feel this way. And it's because they don't know, they're
Ignorant.
ignorant. Yeah. And but that didn't help me. You know what I mean? That didn't make dry my tears up at night, you
Yeah.
know. But she never, I don't really think she ever knew the impact that had on me,
Mhm.
because you know, it was no use of complaining. But
It
I
didn't change it.
remember, no, and I remember crying myself to sleep so many times at night, because I just didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go back to the school there, but I had no choice. So the only thing that kept me going was, you know, okay, well, I'll finish school, get my degree. And if I ever have children, I don't ever want them to have to experience what I've gone through here.
Yeah.
And that's why I
Well,
like El Paso. So nobody cares about the color of your skin, you know?
El Paso is very different.
It is.
And what is kind of wild to me is, when we were young, um, like in preschool, kind of elementary school, I guess. Like I feel like, not, I don't feel like, I know my best friend when I was that young was Elizabeth, which you were friends with her mom. So that's how I guess our friendship started. But I remember, I remember kindergarten. So like, I remember like saying, okay, well, me and Elizabeth are gonna dress the same tomorrow. You need to comb my hair like she told me. Like, I need a ponytail. Although I didn't have any hair. I need a ponytail tomorrow. But not even thinking anything like was different between me and her. And clearly she was white. I was not.
But,
My hair wasn't
because her dad retired out of the military and he came back to Scottsboro to live. So they were exposed. They had black friends from other cities,
Mhm.
So, but then for them to come back to Scottsboro and here it was segregated, it was just like, just couldn't even relate to the way. But
Mhm.
yeah, she was accepted, where
Yeah.
it was just hard. It was
Yeah.
just it's hard.
Yeah. Yeah. But the thing is like how y'all let those friendships be our friendships though. Like when
Oh,
we were young. And so I think about kind of like our experience growing up. I knew we lived where we lived. I knew we lived right by the train tracks. We went to school over here, but then we came back home. But I think I was probably in, I might have been in middle school or junior high school the first time that a race thing actually happened, when I was like, wait a minute, it's us versus them in this situation. And it was kind of like an eye opener. And I remember there was like a fight between a black kid and a white kid. And they said, so dumb. They said, there's going to be a fight tomorrow, the black kids versus the white kids. And I'm like, what? And they were like, bring a knife to school. And I said, but there's only 5 of us here. Like, how are we about to like have a fight? But then I remember being in gym class, and it was me and a white girl in the locker room. And I said, "Are you scared of me?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "Because you're black." And I was like, that was like probably one of the first times where I was like, well, this is a little different. Like, she's just scared of me because I'm black. And I've seen like different like we watch documentaries and things on TV. And one of the questions that on one of the documentaries that we watched, it said, when was the first time that you knew you were black? And I can pinpoint that for me, like, I mean, everybody that we were around, like, that we went to church with and the neighbors and everything, everybody was black clearly. And so I knew we all looked alike, but it never was a thing. Does that make sense?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
it wasn't like, oh, we're black, they're white, or anything. But until that moment, I want to say it was probably in 7th grade because I think Dana was still there. So, um, yeah, Dana.
We were not, and you all weren't either, raised that, oh, well, she's a black girl. No, she's Tia. You
Mhm.
know, uh, we never put labels on you all.
Yeah.
And where, other households were completely different,
Mhm. It's very true. And like I think back and like I just, I know my friends' experiences were very different, like than, what ours was. But I think our circle was just slightly different. And I think it was because like where you worked also, your peer group was different. And
Yeah.
so I
When I
think you
came
end up
back to
being
work,
around.
yeah, when I came back to work at Narando, I gave up the job $75 an hour for a $5 an hour job.
What
And
minimum wage was?
yeah, and it was only because my mom was sick, so money just wasn't important at the time. And even then, and that was like in the 80s, there was still racism because here I had like over 40, $50,000 in this one bank.
Mm,
And when I tried to get a loan to finish uh, building our house in Largensville, the guy, the president, he said, "Why do you have to have a house this big? It's bigger than my house."
okay.
So I immediately took my money out and put it over in First National,
Hmm.
which this is another point, which my parents, I needed to borrow $50,000 to finish my house. And in order for me to get that $50,000, which First National loaned it, my parents had to put their house up as collateral. No white person had to do this. As a matter of fact, I had this friend said that, oh, we got approved to build a house and for 160,000. And I said, well, did anybody have to co-sign? No, we didn't have to co-sign. So even still during the 80s, they still
Well, it was the red line. There was no rules against that red line. Like in,
no, it was still the racist thing,
lending.
you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, they loaned it to us, but my parents had to put their house up as collateral, where
Yeah.
this person over here got 3 times what I needed and didn't have to put nothing up.
Yeah.
What's fair about that? It was just things are, even when I go home now, it just breaks my heart to see that the mentality hasn't changed much. We aren't equipping them with the tools that they need to get out of the predicament that they're in. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah, yeah. And the thing is a lot of times if you never leave where you are, you can't see what you can have, if that makes sense.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah.
you always think, well, this is it because this is all I've ever seen. And if you don't have the example of
All right, I agree
more,
with that. Oh, I agree with that.
if you don't
Uh,
have the example of more. And so I always say, I think us moving out of, from Alabama to Texas did, it opened our eyes up to seeing more things and like a
even
bigger
though no,
world.
even though no one wanted to move to Texas.
No one, including you. None of us wanted to
Oh, I
go.
did. It wasn't that I didn't want to leave because I was truly in love with A. It was just I didn't want to leave my dad behind.
Well, yeah,
That
yeah,
was
and
that
I
was the
mean it's
only thing that I didn't. That was the only reason why I didn't want to go.
yeah, I mean it's just the comfort. Like it was safe. Scottsboro was like safe, like the safe place. And so like leaving there exposed us to like a whole lot of different things that we had never even thought about when we were in Alabama. I mean, given we were still young, we hadn't lived life or whatever. But just like different types of people, knowing different types of people, and just seeing things like people are not just black and white, like, and not in color either. I mean, like, there's shades of gray in the world, and I feel like living in Scottsboro a little bit, people were, and I think it's changed now, but people weren't ever allowed to fully be who they were. Like they weren't fully allowed to be themselves. Like I see like my friends on Facebook and Instagram and like, that have moved away and how they have had a much different life. They're able to
For the
embrace
better.
for the better, and they're able to like embrace who they are fully as people also. Whereas like in Scottsboro, because it's so small also, Scottsboro is so small, everybody's in everybody's business, like you can't sneeze without somebody knowing what you're doing over there. So there's that part. But anyhow, um, I think, and I always talk about this, and by always I mean in the last 2 episodes that I've done, we talk about faith a little bit, and faith is something that I think, not I think, faith is something, and like kind of going to church and knowing the Lord is something that y'all taught to us very young. You were very involved in church as we were growing up and made sure that we were there every Sunday. Where did where did that come from in you that you wanted
Oh,
to
from
pass
our
that to us?
grandmother, from Mom and Dad. I mean, she instilled it into my mom,
Hmm.
who in turn I instilled into you all. But the thing about it was, yeah, we went to church every Sunday, but I was considered, looking back now, I was just a Sunday Christian. You know what I mean? I didn't have that personal relationship with the Lord
Hmm.
until my mother died. And that was such a dark place in my life,
Hmm.
because she and I didn't grow up close. When I was in college, I couldn't talk to her, but once she once you all were born, and um, she was diagnosed with the leukemia, then she and I became very close.
Hmm.
And I can remember thinking that I wished I had had her this way all through high school. And, I mean,
Hmm.
we didn't hug, the only affection I got as far as touching was from my grandmother.
Hmm.
She just didn't hug. I mean, I didn't
We
hug.
don't hug now.
Well, we're better than we were. We,
I've gotten a lot better at the hugging thing.
yeah, but
Granddaddy was
when you don't
affectionate with us.
growing up, I think it's because they were so involved in trying to make a safe place for me and in the community that, they were just wore down. It was no time to be affectionate.
Hmm.
And my grandmother was too busy babying and raising white kids. They got to see her more than I did. So I was jealous for that,
Hmm.
because it was like Monday, the only day she had off was on Sunday. And sometimes if the rich white were going away for the weekend, she would stay there with her kids.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Just thinking back on like how hard it was, but
Yeah.
like
Hard
the
time.
fact that they never complained, like
No, no, they didn't.
they never
Uh,
complained about like having to work hard. And I think that's why you when you mentioned that Nana like tried to make it seem like easy or whatever, it's because of how hard it really was. Maybe she didn't want you to feel it as much, but of course there was no way that you couldn't feel it because you were smack dab in the middle of it, you
yeah.
know. And so just like the hardship and the difficulties that they face.
Yeah,
And
because you
solely
say your
because
grandmother, you say my mom's mom had 5 girls,
mhm,
and she sent all 5 of them to college through cleaning houses and babysitting,
mhm.
that
Because it
says,
was important
yeah,
to so that
education
they
was
didn't have
just,
to.
yeah, education was just your way out of,
Mhm.
of going further than what your parents did. And I
Yeah,
think I think my parents laid a really good foundation for me. So the things that they instilled in me gave me the willpower and I guess what's the word? Grasping for something better than what they had.
yeah,
So therefore, I always kept looking for more and more and more, Um, and and then my thought was, well, if I can give the girls this as a foundation, when they're grown, they're going to reach for something even better. And so the timeline just keeps increasing. You know what I
yeah,
mean? That we aren't going back. We're moving forward each generation.
yeah.
So that was instilled. That was something that my grandmother, Jeanette Snodgrass, instilled in my mom, Inez Talley, which she instilled in me, and hopefully I instilled it in the 3 of you all.
I think we're doing all right.
I think you're doing. I'm very proud of you all. Very, very proud.
Well, thank you for being vulnerable with me tonight and sharing a difficult time that,
It was.
that you had to go through. And also like the memories can't be easy to kind of talk about either.
Oh no, because a couple of times there when we were talking, just the thought made me want to cry again. It's just,
Yeah. But thank you for being vulnerable and sharing with
you're
me
welcome, my
tonight.
child.
And
Anytime you need somebody else, we'll talk about something else.
okay.
Just call me. You got my number.
I know where you live, all those
Yeah,
things.
you do.
So, all right. Well, thank you. And thanks
You're
for
welcome.
joining. We Just Talking tonight.
I love you.
Love you too.